Everyone. Good morning. I'm Sonia Blake, and welcome to the Economic Development Committee meeting for Thursday, February 2nd. Very happy to see everybody here with us today and excited about diving into the agenda. I want to encourage people to engage a little bit in the chat. And first of all, if it's your first meeting, tell us how you heard about the meeting. We'd love to meet you and learn about that. And then also just want to ask you if you would like to put in the chat if you'd like to be a member of the committee or if you prefer to remain as a guest. Members of the committee are assigned a task with a priority area of the Alliance, some of the items that we'll be talking about today and others. And so if you'd like to get more actively involved, then just put that in the chat, or you can direct message me in the chat that you'd like to be a member of the committee, and we will be happy to get you involved and plugged in. So to start us off on our topic number 3 on the agenda, expanding and promoting the business assistance program. So one of the tasks that the Alliance has been doing in our almost 30 years of existence since the Northridge earthquake, where we really helped to get the community back on its feet, is our flagship business assistance program. So I want to have a discussion question about how we can increase participation in this program during the course of this year. And we'll spend a few minutes talking about that. But before I do that, I'd like to share a little bit of insights about the program, just so you have a little bit of context here for the program. So starting with some of our webinars, our total program participation last year was about 1,781 people on various webinars and online education. So you'll see that with our Economic Development Committee and Next Level Growth programs, which are designed for mid-level programs, that's this committee, and then other programs for this particular audience, had about 675 participants registered last year. We also did a lot of outreach to diverse and emerging business owners with different affinity groups like Onyx, our African American Business Hub, Adelante, our Latino Business Hub, and Elevate, our Women's Business Hub. And we had almost 500 people participating in that. We do some work on education and workforce development. There's in fact a committee like this one that meets on that topic to help job seekers connect with training and with employers and help employers find qualified staff. So we had about 137 participants on those kind of calls. And then on our Livable and Sustainable Communities Committee, we had about 336 participants. That's our group that digs into regional issues, for example, housing and homelessness, public safety, environmental sustainability, and topics such as those. So looking ahead to this year, we're very interested in hearing from this committee and our guests about the kinds of programs that you think will be most instrumental in helping drive business growth for our 5-city region. And incidentally, for those of you who aren't aware, our 5 cities include the cities of Burbank, Calabasas, Glendale, San Fernando, and the San Fernando Valley region of the city of Los Angeles. So these are some of the programs that we're thinking of presenting, including programs such as pitching to angel investors coming up later on this month. Also programs on exporting and attracting direct foreign investment or foreign direct investment, however you want to look at that. Programs, for example, June 1st, a major business growth and capital summit where we'll talk about exporting and procurement and contracting and a lot of access to capital leaders who can connect with our business owners. We'll also look at health, since healthcare is such a major driver of our region. We thought we'd do something on the future of health. Seed financing for startups may be of interest, as well as procurement and contracting and tax incentives. So those are some of the topics that we are interested in and thinking about and toying with. And before we open it wide up for discussion, I just want to see if Layla, as one of our point people on business education, would you like to share a little bit about your perspectives on anything that's been discussed so far in terms of the participation, the programs, and where we can potentially increase participation coming up? Layla?
Sure. In terms of participation in small businesses, and we're talking specifically to small business participation, correct, Sonia?
Primarily, but not exclusively.
Yeah.
We definitely are here for mid-sized organizations to grow and for major employers to create jobs as well.
Yeah, so I think one of the conversations that we've been having is just kind of going out a little bit more to the community and connecting with different networks, so we can create to really talk to different companies and get them to, for us to really understand where they are in terms of workforce development, what are their needs, and really start creating pipelines. So we're connecting jobs to businesses in the Valley. And in terms of I think we're also talking about online and providing resources online, and that also helps us create those pipelines online. And in addition to the different resources that exist for small businesses and large businesses, just really creating this network of different resources that can be housed on one location.
Great. I'd like to open it up for any other feedback about educational programs. What topics do you think companies really need to hear about here in the Valley, given where we are?
So, Sonia?
Oh. Yes, Sheila.
Okay. Is that, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we're hearing some background noise too, but but we can hear you.
Okay, great. Okay, perfect. It was a little bit distracting. But I'd like to also add, for the city of Glendale, what we're doing something similar. So in terms of going out to our small businesses, medium-sized companies, and really getting the business intel. And so we actually developed a survey where we asked a series of questions. Is it a foreign-owned company? Do they plan on expanding? What types of employee skills or training are they seeking? Things of that nature, in order for us to pivot and build programming, whether it's like free webinars or seminars, to really provide them, the level of resources that they necessarily need. So we're certainly doing that, especially now that COVID hopefully is behind us, really going out there and connecting. And in addition to that, we are also working really closely with the Small Business Administration. And so we want to tap into their network as well. They have a lot of certification programs, many different types of business programs that we feel that we can collaborate on to share value to the local business community.
Fantastic, Shua. Anyone else have any feedback? You can raise your virtual hand and I'll call on you. We'll just spend a couple more minutes on this topic before moving on. Kathy, please.
Hi, good morning, everybody. So as you know, CMTC helps clients. And so I just want to share that there's a lot of need for companies to understand the importance of strategic planning. So we see that the small, medium companies really are lacking that mentoring for that vision. They're so busy in their day-to-day. So we're seeing a lot of that in some cases, in some parts of our region. We see succession planning as something a good topic to share. And of course, there's a lot of training in soft skills and lean. CMTC is also looking at rolling out a preparedness for active shooters, but I don't necessarily love that idea. But we're here to partner with you guys. So in the areas, if you need webinars and stuff, we can be a service leg for supplying that. Sonia, I think you've done a great job reaching out to the businesses, and I think that it's really with the improvement of communications and getting the word out that we're able to help. But you have a lot of testimonials helping these clients now. I think they're going to keep coming back, and we can expand that. And to your point, Layla, the centralization. So CMTC is doing stuff, you're doing stuff, Glendale's doing stuff, Burbank's doing stuff, the Alliance is doing stuff. I think we need to point to each other so we're not replicating the topics, but totally. but put ourselves forefront, be the sponsors or be the monitors so that people can know where to come locally, super locally, but let's try to focus it in through the Alliance. I think we're all doing too many things that are replicating.
Really helpful. I see, Bob, you have your hand up. Let's make this the last comment and then we'll move on to the next topic. Bob, please.
Bob, you're muted.
No, I'm not. I think that we need to be a repository of the educational programs that are going on in the various community schools and local colleges. We know that they all have some programs with industrial preparedness of some sort, but frankly, it changes with time, and I think we need to know about it. And there are some schools like the North Valley Occupational Center that is very unique in what they do. And I don't know if this task should rest with education and workforce or if it should be with us, but I think that contact with each of these schools to get an indication of what their curriculum is would be extremely valuable to us in terms of interfacing with potential employers.
Fantastic. I think that's great feedback. I'm just going to take a note here. Yeah. Okay, well, fantastic. If there is additional feedback, please do put that in the chat and we'll continue to look into this. Before we go to the next topic on our agenda, which is assessing the need for Valley's economic data, I do want to acknowledge that our board chair, Fred Gaines, has joined us and give you a chance, Fred, if you want to say hi and introduce yourself. Okay, maybe he's on another call. All right, well, Fred is here with us and I'm so thankful for that. So what I'd like to do is share with you a link that I did share on the agenda. We've done a fair amount of research to look at what data do we have available here for the Valley. As some of you may know, CSUN used to have a business data department and they no longer have that. We also had Cal Lutheran University in conjunction with the Business Journal that put on a wonderful business forecast for the Valley in the past. From time to time, LAEDC has published different studies on data. And what we're going to do is start having LAEDC come to our this committee and our education committee to provide a forecast that's specifically data related to the Valley. So what I've done is I've put together a little bit of a compendium here of the various agencies and organizations that do provide data for the Valley. And if not the Valley, LA County, that might be useful and helpful. Here's a little look, a snapshot at the Census Reporter and some of the demographic data that we have available for the Valley. And thanks to the Alliance and one of our founders, maybe more than just him, Bob Scott of Mulholland Institute, and Bob Rodin, you probably know if others were involved with this wonderful activity. They advocated for the San Fernando Valley region, our 5-city region, to be designated as a community district within the census so that we actually have data for our 5-city region, which is very unusual since our region cuts through half of the city of Los Angeles and then includes 5 other cities. But we do have some wonderful data that's available to us that's specific for the Valley now because of that great work that's been done. And you have a chance to take a look and peruse some of that at your leisure. In addition, one of the charts enables us to drill down into some really important economic data. So the prior chart was very much on the demographic data. This actually gives us a little bit more color into employment status of our population, the various occupations that our residents participate in, the various industries where people are employed, and other types of economic data that's very useful and helpful. So I just wanted to open it up for a little bit of perspective and discussion from the group to see what kind of data do you believe is most helpful that we need for the Valley in order to promote potential development, economic development opportunities. Love to open that up to, just open it up to the group. And actually the discussion question is, what additional data is needed to facilitate business retention, business attraction, and or workforce development? So any thoughts from the group on that?
Sonia,
Yes.
Dan Blake was very instrumental in that project with Bob Scott and I participated to a degree in one segment of it. One of the resources that Dan used, and I don't know if it's still available, is the Economic Development Division of the State of California, the Employment Office of the State of California. They had great workforce data and could show both positives and negatives to us where attention might be needed.
Yes, we actually do have a representative, Juan Milan, who's assigned to our region for the EDD, and he can generate reports for us as needed. He did generate reports for us on, for example, the tech industry, the top codes, NAICS codes for the tech industry. So we can kind of get our arms around who's employed and what's the payroll and all of that. So that's a great resource. Thank you for that. Any other feedback about that? About what data is needed and about any resources that we need to be consulting?
You know, I'm putting Will Scully on the spot, I think, but we have to look into whether Cal Lutheran is going to do their economic forecast for the Valley, because they did one specific. I know it was Shannon Sedgwick, if I get the name right, from LEDC. She had some great insight, and maybe she could talk again sometime to us.
Good point. I actually am going to be meeting with Gerhard Apfelthaler, the dean of the business school at Cal Lutheran, about how the Alliance can help Cal Lutheran and partner with them in presenting their forecast and keeping that going. You're right, they do have some great information to provide. And we are going to have Shannon Sedgwick come to the Alliance's meeting. She's going to prepare that economic data for us on an annual basis now. And we're going to have her continue to come. In fact, we've added her to our is it February or March Education and Workforce Development Committee. So definitely look out on our calendar, because we're going to have her do that forecast next month, and then we'll have her continue to do that annually, and we'll partner with Cal Lutheran as well on that. Well, wonderful. I don't want to belabor the topic, so please do again put some great information or any ideas you have in the chat, and we'll go ahead and make sure that we have available on our website the data that can help developers find properties in the Valley that they can develop, businesses that can expand in the Valley, and companies that are already here to grow and thrive right here in the Valley where they're already planted. So really interested in your ideas and resources, definitely send those my way. I think we're ready to move on to the next item on the agenda. And I do want to thank everyone who posted some notes in the chat about how you found out about us on our new meetup group, which just started in January. So welcome, welcome. A lot of folks came to us from the Our Region, Our Future Summit, and I'm so glad that so many people came and were able to hear from our mayor and our new supervisor, Lindsay Horvath, and Metro CEO, Stephanie Wiggins, and others, and that great community convening that we did in January. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Join our committee, come as a guest. We're very interested in having as much participation as we can and getting ideas. The next topic on our agenda is to talk a little bit about the major developments in the Valley and how we as an Alliance and as an Economic Development Committee need to be actively moving that agenda forward, getting additional development taking place in the Valley. Let's see. Speaking of the Business Journal, I just think that I want to call your attention to this wonderful resource. And the Business Journal does this wonderful quarterly roll-up of development activities in the Valley. And so it's very helpful to be able to see this. If those of you aren't subscribing yet to the Business Journal, I know Will on here could probably help you with that. And we would be really excited to get this information out. So it kind of talked about some of the new trends in the last quarter of 2022, where in the San Fernando Valley, it looks like vacancy rates rose to 23.6%, up from 17.6% the previous quarter, and compared to 16.4% the previous year for the fourth quarter. So there's a significant increase in the office vacancies recently. As a result, or maybe connected to that, rents fell by 1 cent and 5 cents year over year. So that's really interesting to note what's happening there. At our Reach and our Future Summit, we did have speakers talk about what we can do with our excess office inventory and looking at adaptive reuse efforts to turn office into housing. There's a lot of office space being turned into medical office now, and Tarzana Medical Plaza is one of the major projects here that are underway and that are growing, and I believe is already at 90% occupancy. So there's some real transitions taking place in the Valley with our real estate. And we're trying to keep our thumb on the pulse of what's happening there so that we can go with those trends and bring as many benefits and job creation as possible. Also want to mention Burbank and Glendale were also featured, and looking at some interesting trends on the office markets in Burbank, neighboring Burbank and Glendale. And vacancy rate in Glendale also on the rise to 25.2%, and in Burbank to 16.5%. There's interesting information about the office space and square footage costs there. And so I think one of the things that we're going to do here at the Alliance is we're putting together a publication about real estate opportunities. And the audience for this will be developers and will be businesses seeking expansion. So we're looking at featuring properties in our 5 city regions. We're a little light on our Calabasas locations and our city of San Fernando locations. So I just want to put it out there. We're going to be adding and shopping this around to our 5 cities and making sure that we've got great representation. This is just a draft, so I haven't shared it with the committee quite yet, but I did want to get your feedback on it and what we're covering before we actually finalize this document. So we've got a section on featured commercial leasing locations. So where do we want to draw people's attention for expansion? If you have ideas about that, make sure you share those properties with us so that we can include that in this before we go ahead and do the outreach. A second category is redevelopment opportunities. So these would be places in underinvested parts of our cities, perhaps in some areas that really need investment. So there are some former big box stores, some retail centers and standalone buildings that we want to promote. And we are putting information in this publication about that. And then there are vacant parcels as well that we have identified around the Valley. And we're looking at, how can we go ahead and activate those and get developers to look at those. And then finally, we've got these special districts identified, places where there's a lot of great activity for walkability, for promoting small business districts, for getting people excited, where there's a lot of public investment happening in these areas. And we're looking at what kind of companies can leverage that in order to really augment those areas. So with all that said, I want to see, is Brian Malish on with us? He's our committee member who's kind of a point person on the major real estate developments.
I don't think Brian is here, but I know Scott and Eric also have their finger on the pulse of what's happening. And I don't know of any sort of land around, but Scott, would you like to comment about whether, I know Cronky is buying up all our malls locally in Woodland Hills, but in some other places. And I don't mean to be so facetious about this huge development, because it's a massive development that's going to happen in the West Valley here with the Rams purchase of the mall and adjoining buildings.
Well, look, the intent of Warner Center was to spur development, to spur growth. We drew the specific plans to permit an additional almost 50 million square feet. That's 15 million square feet of commercial space and another 19,000 residential units. And this was the plan for Warner Center. I haven't seen the most recent plan from Cronky. I don't know what his plans are at this moment. He could either use the existing plans that were approved for Westfield, or he could create a whole new set of plans and go back to the city. We're waiting to see what that is. I'm sure some people on high might know, but I have not seen any plans on that yet. Regarding development around town, having spoken to some developers right now, unfortunately, there's a bad situation going on that hopefully will be short term, and that's the high interest rates and the recession, let's call it, that we're currently in. And that is putting a bit of a hit to development because of the cost. We're coming across projects now that used to cost us $70 a foot to build, now costing over $200 a foot to build, which is mainly medical. And it's really making a problem to try to close deals with these doctors that want to expand and come into the area. It's John, you would know best on that. You know, how the cost of materials and labor has just, you know, gone way up. So that's really what I'm seeing right now. Hopefully we'll see another spur, because in my opinion, the best time to develop is when the market is down and you have the property already operable when the market starts up again. That's when you want to be there. You don't want to start building at the top of the market. So I think now's a good time to start. It's a matter of finding the funding and finding the opportunities. That's what we're here for.
It's always a great time to build, no matter whether it's at the top of an economic development because prices are scoring, or maybe jobs are a little slimmer so that the prices are a little better. Eric, would you like to add to what Scott said in any way?
Yeah, I think, you know, from experience and seeing kind of businesses out there and looking to enter into the valley, I know there's a lot of different types of challenges or hurdles some of them have to overcome. But I think, you know, the plan, I think with the Valley Economic Alliance is to really kind of hone down on a few items that really, you know, push people over the fence to say, hey, this is a place that we can do this. I know with developers and contractors, as you guys know, and John, you could speak to this, it's the processes to get things done sometimes takes a lot longer than we'd like to. And so hopefully we can figure out some type of streamlined processes that works well for everybody.
They are items that we're going to talk about in just a second, but that is a challenge all the time, working with all the different cities.
Can I interject just a little bit? I think what Sonia was talking about with the adaptive reuse in a little more housing is kind of spot on in terms of where maybe to point developers right now. My wife works for a major furniture manufacturer, and what we're seeing on that front is that these kind of creating hubs where people can kind of come in and hotel space in a sort of hybrid workforce environment. So I think there's still going to be a lot of commercial real estate kind of around unless we can draw new businesses in. So, you know, it might be a good idea to keep kind of pointing towards more housing, which we're short on anyway. So,
Yeah, really good food for thought.
And I do think it's an excellent point that everybody is making, is that the reason that some businesses will continue to come to the Valley is because we have lots of people here, workers are here, and you're trying to put your businesses where you can get workers to work for you. And I think that's even more like the figures that came out this morning, the unemployment figures had not gone bad. They were much better than expected, and that employers are holding on to employees so that there wasn't a greater number signing on. But I think that would all be lent. We do need to hear from Starkis, if you would like to give us anything that you have from BizFed on any of these topics.
Yeah, of course. We definitely pay attention to all these trends, and our housing committee is involved in discussing all these issues. I am not particularly involved in policy matters, unfortunately. I'm on the development side of things, but definitely interested in the topic, and we're involved in discussing and vetting all these issues with our members that represent different industries.
It's great. You know who else? Sam, I don't know if you can come off mute and share some thoughts, but Sam Hughes, as a former economic and workforce development at the City of LA. They have some interesting perspectives on real estate, and now what he's doing with economic resources and the nonprofit developer there. Sam, any thoughts to share on where we should be looking at developing the Valley, or any particular insights on this?
Oh, I thanks, Sonia. Appreciate everyone's comments. I won't get into any specifics, but I know that ERC, the company of which I preside over, we're bullish on different areas within the Valley. We look at the planning, we're forward looking, we're looking at transit and certainly development opportunities along planned transit lines. We've just acquired a building, and we're looking to do additional development in and around where we just acquired. So we're bullish. We like to go into communities where there's upside. We like the high cap rates that ultimately will be compressed over time. And so we're mindful of that. And we're definitely looking forward to expanding our presence in the San Fernando Valley. But thanks, Sonia. Appreciate it. Here to listen, Billy. Thank you.
Thank you for that and for joining us. Any other comments before we move on to talking more about development permitting and our initiatives to help reform? Nancy, please.
I've put together a list of 23 local, state, and federal areas, and I'm happy to email that to you, and you can pick it apart and take some of the ideas. Some of them are probably old and tired, but others are innovative. And here's one example: EIR reports, making them for a section or a quadrant of an area and making them valid for 5 years. So developers don't have to go through that long, tedious process. It cut the time to maybe a year and a half shorter. But that's just one out of the 23. I think there's 23. So I'll email that to you, Sonia.
Wonderful. Okay, great. And we'll share that.
And I see, Bob, do you have your hand up to speak?
I do. I think one of the things that exists here in the Valley in particular is clusters on a geographic basis. The Northwest Valley is very high-tech oriented. The 101 freeway corridor is very heavily medically oriented. There are transportation organizations kind of on the fringes of the Valley in the northeastern section. And I think that we should try and work toward getting visibility into what this distribution looks like. And I think an example of that is where Burbank was at one time, the place where the film industry was. There's also a lot of film industry in some of those big studio buildings or sound stages that they built in the northeastern portion of the Valley. So I think in terms of development, we want to see if we're going to be leading companies or assisting, to see where they might be close to their cousins, because that seems to be a very positive element.
Good point, Bob, because I know up in Sun Valley, Rexford, and Hudson Pacific have massive developments they're doing, all aimed towards the movie and TV industry. And I'm told there's still a huge amount of people looking for space there. So who's going to take up zoning? Is it Eric?
Yes, Kanika and Eric are going to talk about zoning. Before we do, I just want to say that on June 1st, the business summit that we're going to be doing at the Alliance, we will be talking quite a lot about supply chain. And I love what you were talking about, Bob, creating these synergies, really enhancing and leveraging the synergies between complementary industries and geographically, so that they can really work together. And so we'll be moving in that direction. And that's really great feedback. So I'm thinking that maybe we want to switch the items on the agenda and actually talk about development permit reform before we talk about the zoning revisions and community plans, because it seems like it's right on the heels of what we're talking about. And Jonathan Gilliam, thanks to him and some others on a particular subcommittee, we've had some advancements in permit reform. Maybe you can tell us what we've been able to accomplish and get our cities to understand. And then maybe you can tell us a little bit about what you think might be next steps in permit reform, Jonathan.
Sure. So last year, our committee was basically mostly focused on City of Los Angeles. And what we did was kind of put together a report identifying some of the inefficiencies that we saw in the process and some suggestions about how we might, fix those things. And we kind of shopped this around and got it in front of the building department GM, the planning GM, and several council persons and staff. And I'm happy to report that, I would like to claim credit, but a lot of the inefficiencies we identified are being addressed, not necessarily as we had suggested, but City of LA in the building department has moved forward pretty well in the permitting process. I think they've done a really nice job kind of, first off, bringing people back to work, being able to get back in the office was one of the major things that we have. And then also instituting an appointment system with that goes hand in hand with digital submittals. So it's actually fairly efficient right now. There are still some inefficiencies in regards to the sign-off process that I would like to continue to pursue. I still think there's a lot of weight potentially behind having some types of projects that are almost never rejected have boilerplates. So they can just run through. You attach the boilerplate and sign an affidavit, get a building permit. Keeping that simple, and I think I would like to continue kind of looking at that process with the rest of the municipalities in the San Fernando Valley, just sort of identifying things that we think we maybe could suggest to different cities that would help speed the process. In addition to that, and this is a little bit lower level than the next thing we're going to talk about, is some zoning code changes. And not necessarily changing the zoning, but I think there's a lot of things in all the zoning codes throughout the municipalities that are kind of leftovers from a past time. I mean, the best suggestion or the best example I have right now is that City of Los Angeles in single family dwelling still requires 2 covered parking spaces. So you have to put in a garage no matter what, even though nobody really uses their garage to park in. So there's a whole series of things like that that I think are hindrances to both housing development, and there has to be similar things within the commercial side that should just go by the wayside, that we should kind of have taken out of the code or start talking about to the cities about revising them, because they're no longer kind of accomplishing what their original intent was. They're just slowing things down. So that's kind of where we're at right now, and that's where I think we would like to go. I'm going to start polling people at the AIA about some of the zoning code suggestions they want to change, and if you have zoning code suggestions, that would be great. I would also like to hear about anybody's experiences with some of the newer stuff that's being rolled out. There is one negative that I've heard on something new that's been rolled out, and this ties into what Scott was talking about last year with inspections. Apparently, the inspectors are very, very busy, So City of LA has started a program for what they're calling helpers for the building inspectors. And these are people coming out to do inspections with zero building experience other than the course that they're supposed to take to help the building inspectors. And I just cannot see good things coming from this, having people that don't know how to read plans inspecting buildings. I think it's quite frankly dangerous. So if anybody has any suggestions, please chime in. Sonia, if you have any comments.
Thank you, Jonathan. That's really helpful. We'll work with you on that polling of the AIA, really eagerly anticipating that and looking at all of these great suggestions. So definitely send those info in the chat or email me. And our chairman, Fred Gaines, has his hand raised. Fred, good morning.
Good morning, everybody. One of the things that I think that we can be involved with is sort of pre-zoning and pre-clearing along these transit lines. So one of the things that happened with the Orange Line is there was discussion of trying to pre-zone all the stops so that people could come in once the Orange Line came in and do some housing development, commercial development at the various stops. We were not wildly successful with that. I mean, it's worked at the end, in Warner Center, but along the route at the various stops, there has not been. And we're now however many years into the orange line, 20 years into the orange line or more. And we are not seeing at all the stops the idea of having some kind of development, the transit-oriented development. So now we're going to put the line down Van Nuys Boulevard. It would be nice if the day that line opens, all of those properties along Van Nuys Boulevard, which the idea is they could all be redeveloped with, maybe some ground floor retail, commercial, public using space and housing above, that by the time that comes, that's set up to be a over-the-counter type thing. It's not a case by case, CEQA review of each one. So how do you do that? You either do an EIR now for the whole boulevard so that it's done, and when people come in afterwards, and you rezone it so that, okay, this line is now there, I want to put housing right on the line. And with ground floor, whatever you want on the ground floor, retail, commercial, public using space. If you're going to build that over the counter, you either do the EIR now, or you go get an exemption. Have the law change to exempt from CEQA projects that meet certain criteria that are along that line. But what we found with the orange line is that we didn't do that very well or at all. And this line is there, and well used, tens of thousands of people using it. Still, we haven't developed those spots at the various stops. And we should try and do better for this new line that's going to go down Van Nuys Boulevard. And so that's something that I think should be right in our target.
Absolutely. That's fantastic feedback. I want to ask everyone to put in the chat or email me with additional feedback on that. Jonathan, let's have you say a couple words on that, and then we'll go to Kanika and Eric about other kinds of zoning that we want to talk about as well before we stop.
Sure. I think Fred's idea is a great one. Anybody that's dealt with CEQA kind of knows that it's very prescriptive. So I'm wondering, as part of that kind of plan of attack, that we need to talk to our Valley representatives that are going to be at the State House, because I think in order to do kind of the blanket EIR you're talking about, we would need a major revision to the actual law for that to happen. And I think this circumstance and shortage of housing right now is a great time to kind of come after them about this, because there's not going to be a lot of weight behind changing CEQA unless it's for something like more housing. So we should certainly push on our state representation.
Good, Jonathan. Thank you. And we'll go to Kanika, and feel free to talk about this and the next topic on our agenda, which is zoning revisions we may be looking at for the community plans as the cities are updating community plans, things like parking and things like size of ground floor spaces to make sure there are accommodations for small businesses, or whatever other kinds of zoning reforms or ideas or best practices. Kanika, I know that you are expert in this area, so please share with us.
Thank you, Sonia, for the introduction. I've been doing this for many years. I'm very passionate. One goal I decided to do when I became a planner working with different cities throughout California is to look at zoning and see how we can keep the zoning be tailored for each community and promote economic development and housing. We have to balance both, because we have to be able to support the business community and support the resident. But before I go there, I really want to address Fred's and Jonathan's comment about CEQA. I understand EIR is a long process, but it depends on the size of the development. There are other exemptions in CEQA that you can use. And a lot of time, this is what I've done before when I work in other cities, when they come in with a mixed use project, is using the infill development. Of course, there's size limitation there. So if you guys are talking about trying to streamline development process, that's definitely something I would recommend doing, is push for update to the CEQA law. CEQA was established since 1976. It's been amended over years just to keep up with these changing demand, but maybe it needs to be reevaluated as a whole to address our condition now, just like zoning code. There's zoning code, it needs to be tailored for a specific community, and it needs to be keep up to date with the changing market. So I just want to let you know, if you guys want any help on CEQA or anything, let me know. I think there's a lot of good CEQA consultant out there that can help navigate projects that you have processed with other city to avoid the EIR process. And the reason why is because if they're along transit or development, there are a lot of exemption that you can use. And with the new BMT analysis, traffic impact shouldn't be a problem. And a lot of CEQA projects are really depending on traffic impact. So then there's traffic impact that become air quality impact and noise impact. But if you can go through with no traffic impact, then you don't have to go through the EIR process. So we can talk more about that on the side. So now I'll go back to talk about zoning code reform. I'm new to the city of San Fernando, and one passion I have coming here is to change their zoning code. Before I was here, I also work at different city, but also as a consultant in updating zoning code for different cities, and to focus on what the community is like. A lot of time consultant, when they give you a zoning code, they will give you something that they use from another community and give it to another community. It may or may not work. So that's why a lot of times it's a job of the city staff to look at the changes to make sure the zoning code is tailored to fit your specific community. And also, is it keeping what up with our market? So I'm really excited about the zoning code reform to promote economic development. There are a lot of zoning code reform to promote housing. And I feel like they're just mainly focusing on housing now for zoning code reform, but not economic development. So one suggestion I would like to start, I want to start thinking about is repurposing public space. I know Sonia meant parking, but City of LA and other cities have been doing a good job in repurposing street parking. But what about repurposing our sidewalk, repurposing our common space area, our parks? I briefly worked with the Port of San Diego. I know their responsibility is to maximize trust land. At that time, we were able to take downtown San Diego Harbor near the Midway and put in a food kiosk there to help activate the space, turning a really open space park, just a pass through, to become a very activated space for the community. And not only that, it brings in revenue to the Port of San Diego. So that's one thing I would like to see how we can do here in the San Fernando Valley as a region. Eric, I'll turn to you. You have anything else to add?
Great, thank you. I think there was a lot of great things that I think every community need to be reviewed and tailored to specifically the needs. One of the things that I think we need to think about is, what does our city look like in 10, 15, 20 years? Are the dynamics of how people live and do transportation going to be the same? I think we're in this changing environment as we look forward in that 10 to 15 year process about how families live, how families commute, who lives together, and where they're going to end up being. So as we look down this road and doing research and understanding how to reactivate spaces that are underutilized, we're going to look at how zoning affects the uses there and come up maybe with something that really kind of works for everyone here. Jonathan, just going back to the permitting section here, I work with a lot of businesses, and a lot of properties have specific zones, and then they have uses, and trying to get something changed that's a use there sometimes prohibits businesses from either operating or changing their use. And because it's so difficult, they say, well, we're not going to even be here. And so I think as we look at zoning, what could be done, how we can have things done by right, to help promote businesses from being able to execute what they want to do in a certain area within a certain building, I think would be interesting. Just looking at the repurposing of office buildings, you only have a certain type of use you can do there. Maybe there's a way to do and look at experimentation with, what else can we do in this office building, and look on the short term to see if this can be duplicated over the long term with certain types of uses. So we're going to be coming together, kind of exchanging minds, figuring out maybe what the best plan and strategies might be, and figuring out what the course would be from here.
Fantastic, Eric. Thank you all so much for those really great ideas. We're going to be capturing all this and advancing it forward. So definitely be checking out, just join our email list for updates, and be checking out thevalley.net/events for future committee meetings as well as programs. Our next program is a next level growth program on pitching to angel investors on February 7th at 10 a.m. We're going to start a series of in-person meetups at our business center on Van Nuys Boulevard in Sherman Oaks, starting February 9th at 4 to 6 p.m. And then our world famous Valley of the Stars Gala, our 25th anniversary Valley of the Stars Gala, is coming up April 13th at the Odyssey in Granada Hills. Sponsorship and tables are available. It's a great room to be in and to be visible in. So definitely save the date and plan to be there 5:30 to 8:30. Again, let me know if you want to be a member of this committee. If not, then you'll continue to be a guest and more than welcome to come. And any other comments or questions, just pop them in the chat. It is 11 and I give it back to John, our chair. Thanks, John.
Well, this has been a great meeting, guys. So we want to thank everybody for being here. There was a lot of different input. If you've got something you'd like to share, please send it in an email to Sonia. And if you want to get more involved in like permit reform or any of those, because we're going to have some other meetings, not with this group. But thank you again, and stay healthy and stay well. Thank you all.